last day before the city council breaks for their Christmas and holiday break, and they got a full agenda, and they're railroading through all of these contracts for the emergency manager. They're railroading through a gangster takeover of the border board. They're railroading through an unbelievable amount of land in this vulture capitalism land sale to John Hands, doing business as Hands Woodland. And the people came out, and we got a right to comment. We got a right to talk impact. We got a right to demand transparency. We got a right to be engaged in democracy. So this is democracy. This is how it operates. We elect people, they do their job, and then we checkmate them, and we get a right to open up our mouth and say, this is how we feel, this is our discourse, this is our dialogue.
I think with the consent agreement, we should not do something that flies in the face of an action which will restore the constitutional rights and protect them for our citizens. And I believe that Mr. Orr has the power to do it. He's let him do it. It should not be City Council, which would, by action, if it got approved today, would be waiving the whole issue of conflict. We would be knowingly waiving the by the vote, which would not be sound. And I don't think it would be in line with the charter, which speaks to conflicts of interest in our charter, approved by the citizens and approved by the state of Michigan. Thank you, Mr. President.
The limits of tyrants is determined by the tolerance of those whom they oppress. The limits of tyrants is determined by the tolerance of those whom they oppress. So are we going to tolerate? No! Are we going to let it go and shrug our shoulders and say, okay? Are we going to look the other way and let somebody else do it? Or will we business as usual, making the casinos rich and then playing the lottery and then reading the racist press and acting like everything is okay? We need to wake up. Wake up. Shake up. Wake up and make do.
It sounds like a lot of the ideas are still along the same lines. So you have neighborhood uses of spaces, you have local uses of spaces, then you have other people exploiting the spaces, you have other people using the spaces to pass through. So it's like both taking place at the same time.
It appears that the retirees are being scapegoated.
That's right. That's right.
The retirees were not responsible for the 2008 crash of the stock market.
That's right.
It was not the workers of the city of Detroit. It was bankers who wanted to make very risky deals, derivatives, high-risk bungling, and decided that they would play with mortgages all over this country.
Okay.
And they devastated the city of Detroit.
Right.
And now you want to take it out on the workers.
That's right.
And the real atrocity of the transit system not working is that people are not able to get to jobs. People are not able to get to their health care appointments. We were talking with one of the riders talking about taking children to Children's Hospital and not being able to get from Woodward to Children's Hospital without there being a connection. The Veterans Hospital is not connected. The whole medical center is not really connected to the transportation system. So there's some deep-seated problems, and the exploration of the problem needs to include the voices of the citizens, the riders. There needs to be more direct contact.
Yes.
So that it's not a matter of being on the back of the bus, it's a matter of getting on the bus.
That's right.
What I'm asking is for your assistance in raising some awareness of what's going on. The mayor's office has moved a proposal of land sale to John Hance, a very large amount of land on the east side, and they've moved this into the council agenda for this meeting at 10 a.m.
Why did you hear that? So, one of the land things that was gangster imminent domain, South Executive,
showing them what democracy looks like.
Put your sidewalk.
You all must understand, this has nothing to do with our finances and everything to do with trying to kill democracy in Michigan. They want to shield the vote for 2014. They want to make sure that you experience permanent voter suppression. This has nothing to do with the finances of the city. You must participate in saving yourself. The politicians are right now selling you out.
We would be better served by rapid transit with a few stops between 8 Mile and the Fairgrounds, New Center, the Midtown and downtown. Something that would allow people that are actually residents of Detroit to get where they're going rapidly. Basically, as has already been thought of, this seems like it's going to serve people who are transporting themselves into the city and going from there to downtown, and that's nice for them. But for us who are residents of the area, it's not only not going to serve us, because we're already in the new center.
Bill asks, how is a new hockey arena an engine for economic development? Is it a smart use of $284 million in taxpayer money?
Yeah, again, as an old accountant, I'm always somewhat challenged on projects like that. And if it was just a project like that, I would probably have even more skepticism. But this is a wonderful project, particularly because of where it's located. I think this is where it adds tremendous value. You've heard us talk about Midtown and downtown Detroit. Detroit is very large in geography. Basically, think of Woodward Avenue, one long avenue where you have downtown at one end that ends at the river, and then there's a gap, and then there's Midtown. And they're both doing really well, but there's this kind of area in the middle that's not a good area. This hockey arena, the arena we're talking about, goes right in the center of that. It really connects those two areas along with the M1 project, which is the light rail corridor. So it's something that from a long-term public purpose and public value, I see tremendous value in that particular project because of its location and opportunity.
Tonight is not an enforceable community benefits agreement. What we have is a diluted version of the things that we even presented in the ad hoc committee and asked Olympia Development for. I asked Madam President and the Council to please not pass this until there is in place an enforceable community benefits agreement. One that has a committee that has actual power. What has been suggested is merely a committee of yes people that will only have the ability to say yes, Mr. Olympia Development.
Okay, so again, as your employer, I'm not asking you, I'm telling you that we want you to vote this CBA agreement ordinance or this agreement out of this committee and bring it before the city council for a vote. Because we the people want the CBA. And you keep saying I, but it's not you. You know, it's us. And you work for us. And this is what we want you to do. You and the rest of the council.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here and for addressing your opinions with us today. I look forward to seeing you back.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. My name is Linda Campbell. I am a resident and homeowner in District 2. I'm going to make a statement and a question since the gentleman here told me I could only have one question. My statement is that I want to raise an issue that I think is on the minds and hearts of a lot of Detroiters. It is both an economic justice and a racial justice issue. And that has to do with the development that is happening in and around the city of Detroit. Whereas many of us, especially as longtime Detroiters, are delighted to see development coming to our city, It appears to be uneven, Mr. Mayor, inasmuch as millions of our tax dollars are being distributed to mostly developers who are not majority representation. That is, they are not majority Detroiters. And what we notice is that there are not a lot of jobs that are occurring as a result of that. And so many of us have organized and have gone to council to ask for a community benefit agreement. A community benefit agreement ordinance that would say, yes, when development comes to the city of Detroit and they're using public dollars in their large developments, we believe Detroiters have the wherewithal and the smarts to sit with developers and to negotiate a community benefit agreement so that it's a win-win. The developers win and community wins in terms of jobs, economic development, small business retention, and have you. Mr. Mayor, I travel up and down Woodward, the M1 line. I can count on one hand the people of color I've seen working up there, sir.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, Bernard White, an African-American contractor, is one of the leads. You've got several African-American contractors working on that one rail. And again, I will come back. I believe in community benefits. So let's talk about what we have done. We have that area off of 375, the Brewster Wheeler Recreation Center, which the demolition folks said had to come down. That is a center of deep historic interest to this community. Joe Lewis once trained there. It was the recreation center for families who grew up in the Brewster projects. We went out for proposals. We are reusing that property. We have a restaurant owner who is Caucasian, and 120 houses are being built around by John Reed, an African-American developer. If you go the next project over in Brush Park, we've got a housing project that includes Dan Gilbert's people, also includes African-American developers from Detroit, like Sam Thomas and Marvin Beatty. And so every time we have taken an agreement, since I've been there, to City Council, it has had community benefits in it, and so far everyone has been approved by the Council. So I believe in community benefits. I think we got a lot of work to do, there's no doubt about it, but we're working hard and doing it.
Support an ordinance that then mandates that large-scale developers actually enter into a legally enforceable agreement with community?
Again, what I am agreeing to, as I have said to the Council President, is that every single agreement I send to Council will have a community benefit agreement in it, and Council will review it and decide on it.
That's been negotiated with community. We're asking for community involvement.
Yeah, and so this is an issue that, again, I wish we had earlier in the night, but if people want to stay, I'll stay and talk about it. We landed the $150 million lightweight metal manufacturing facility in Corktown. We were competing against suburban Detroit and Ohio, $150 million center where they are going to make the next generation of lightweight metals going to cars and ships and boats. We fought tooth and nail till the last second. We got it landed, and the workers who are going to work there are going to be trained at Focus Hope. Good manufacturing jobs, training Detroiters coming in here. If I had said to them, before we can make a deal with you, you have to sit down with a group of neighbors who may argue or disagree with each other. You know what neighborhood groups can be like in this town. And then you've got to work it all out with them. They would have said, thank you, goodbye. And that $150 million and all those jobs coming through Focus Hope would have gone to the suburbs. So I don't agree that you say to the developers, as has been proposed, all of the people in the zip code get together and form a committee and negotiate. I don't agree with that.
Sir, I respectfully disagree.
I know you do.
I think Detroiters deserve better.
I know you do. Okay, go ahead. Anything else? Go ahead.
Right mates that we're in violation of.
I'm really appreciative of having all these folks coming in here without bringing a single cent to help. Yes.
I think I've gotten through it now, Madam President. You mentioned Homrick, and I didn't know who Homrick was. Is that a Detroit contractor?
I believe so.
Okay, thank you.
I
Detroit, 9 activists headed to a jury trial Wednesday on charges of blocking trucks from shutting off residents' water during the summer of 2014 when the city cut off running water from tens of thousands of families. The United Nations has condemned the ongoing water shutoffs as a violation of international human rights law.
Of the council. I represent about 12 or 15 organizations from the Brightmoor area. We call ourselves the Northwest Neighborhood Community Benefits Consortium, rather. And the co-chair with me is Alicia George, who couldn't be with me this morning, but I have with me Doug Dillard, who is a member of the Miller Grove Block Club. Back in April of 2014, we began to negotiate with the Meyer Corporation around community benefits for the new store at McNichols and Grand River. Besides being involved in events in our own neighborhood, we felt that as longtime stakeholders, we had something to say, the right to say something about development in our neighborhood. We came to the table, we got them to come to the table late, but we were able to press them to do away with the box on their application forms that require you to say you had a prior conviction. We pressed them to hire members from our neighborhood organizations and the zip codes around, and we pressed them to have their interviews in our neighborhood. And the initial results are good. Out of 325 people hired, 321 are from Detroit, and 75 to 80% of those are from the zip codes around the store. All the while we were doing this, we were also watching and waiting for this body to support us. We had the support of our individual councilperson Tate and his staff, but we were watching and waiting for your support in the form of the passage of a community benefits ordinance.
Poisoning began in 2014 when an unelected emergency manager appointed by Snyder switched Flint's water supply to the long-contaminated and highly corrosive Flint River in a bid to save money.
And I am here to say that our organization has worked on the community benefits agreement for, I believe, 4 years now. We're totally committed to it because we see that many of the people served by the Capuchin Soup Kitchen are not benefiting from the redevelopment in Detroit. Our people do not live in the new housing. Very few of them are able to secure jobs that are being generated by the new development. And so we need some kind of a legally binding agreement that will be able to enforce the fact that people perhaps can receive training, can receive benefits from the development that's happening in Detroit so that it can be a benefit to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Detroit is facing an affordable housing crisis, and we're obligated to make sure that the working mother with 2 children is able to remain in Detroit after the revitalization, just as much as the young person who's moved to downtown to work for one of the corporations.
With all respect to the developers who've spoken, they're speaking as though this is a building issue, a profit issue, a market issue, but affordable housing is a people issue.
Detroit is in the midst of a housing crisis for our families at 30% and below income.
And the vast majority of Detroiters are not getting the access they need to truly affordable housing.
If developers in Detroit are intimidated by the idea of following housing ordinances, navigating simple waiver processes, or figuring out how to use subsidy to build the housing that those subsidies were intended for, with all due respect, they might want to find another line of work.
Of course, developers are going to argue against affordable housing requirements because they will make less money.
The developers here are all smart men and women. We are confident that they have the intellect and the know-how to navigate new rules that would require us to start building truly affordable housing in Detroit.
It appears that Detroit's revitalization is being driven by developers who are setting their own standards, and there is no comprehensive housing plan to offer guidance, at least none that the public is aware of.
The Housing Trust Fund and this inclusionary zoning ordinance is an opportunity to go ahead and address that affordable housing crisis now as part of the revitalization.
Income. And developers who say that they can't, even with public subsidies, afford to build even 5% of new homes, perhaps they shouldn't receive public support at all. Because we need that housing at that rate and even lower.
Thank you.
And we need developers who have the skill and know-how to build what we need for the residents that are here, not just developers who are only concerned with building developments that work for developers.
Little Caesars Arena open for business to the cheers of Kid Rock fans and the chants of some protesters.
Live from downtown Detroit, Local 4 News at 11 starts now.
No visa! No visa!
But outside, a group of protesters marched and chanted against the Romeo, Michigan native because of his Southern rock rebel persona that over the years has included using the Confederate flag.
Each year, hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars are used to fund for-profit enterprises here in the city of Detroit.
This has not always worked out for our communities.
The taxpayers of Detroit are paying for 60% of the new hockey arena.
The city handed this land, valued at $3 million, to Olympia Development for $1.
So in 2013, Detroiters began to negotiate community benefits agreements.
Environmental protection.
Small business participation.
Affordable housing.
So we need council to support community benefits.
In the spring of 2013, residents from the North End Woodward Community Coalition met with City Council member Brenda Jones. In these meetings, residents called for a community benefits ordinance.
The Community Benefits Ordinance will create agreements that can be legally enforced if developers don't keep their promises.
Detroiters conducted hundreds of hours of meetings and consultations with community members, lawyers, business leaders, and city professionals on a local and national level. The goal was to work with council to present voters with the most viable, practical, and vetted ordinance possible. In spring 2014, now City Council President Brenda Jones, introduced a community benefits ordinance to City Council.
But the ordinance was held up in the Planning and Development Committee for over 2 years.
Residents used this time to conduct negotiation trainings all around Detroit to prepare local communities to effectively and legally negotiate with developers around their community's needs.
You would be hard-pressed to find a better, more legitimate example of the kind of democratic participation we need in Detroit right now. The process that Rise Together Detroit led was comprehensive and well-organized.
We're block club and association leaders.
We are architects. We nourish our community.
We empower our neighbors to live sustainably.
We run small businesses and we make important decisions every day.
We keep our community safe.
We're culture creators.
We're lawyers. We know how to fight fairly.
When we have an initiative that we believe in that can strengthen our communities, we campaign for it because we have that right.
In the spring of 2016, with the original ordinance still held up in council, Rise Together Detroit kicked off a petition drive to get the community benefits ordinance on the November ballot. This drive was the culmination of 3 years of research, trainings, and organizing. Detroit residents collected over 5,400 signatures to get the Community Benefits Ordinance initiative on the ballot. But as soon as Detroiters obtained enough signatures, Councilmember Scott Benson introduced a competing Community Benefits Ordinance. Benson's ordinance would not require developers to enter into legally binding agreements with community.
Even though Detroiters collected enough signatures, the Detroit Election Commission still gets to decide whether the People's Community Benefit Agreement Ordinance will get put on the November ballot.
To read more about the Community Benefits Ordinance and to stay informed, visit risetogetherdetroit.com.
Proposal A is a community's proposal, a result of over 4 years of trying to get City Council to pass a community benefits ordinance.
Proposal B, the bad proposal, states that if a project is under $75 million, the developer does not have to consult the community that they are developing in.
That means they don't have to tell you, they don't need your input, and they don't have to care on how it affects you.
Con propósito A, tenemos como 5,000 firmas en la comunidad de Detroit y lo queremos poner en la votación.
Okay, so what that means is that Proposal A got 5,000 signatures to get it on the November ballot.
Proposal A is part of the community to work with and negotiate with developers.
In November, vote Proposal A.
This November, vote Proposal A.
Just remember, B is for bad, and A is for the one that acknowledges us. Support Proposal A.
If you've turned on your TV or checked your mail, you've heard the corporate attack on Proposal A. Mayor Mike Duggan and special interest groups have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to smash real community benefits.
You're not alone.
5,000 real Detroiters signed petitions to get Proposal A on the ballot. Detroiters can see past the expensive commercials and the high-gloss mailers to the truth that Proposal A is really awesome.
Linda, thanks for waiting. You're on the line. Hi, Linda.
This is Linda Campbell. Thanks for hosting this session, Steve. I'm with Equitable Detroit Coalition. Some of your listeners, and I believe you are as well, Steve, are familiar with the citywide community benefit agreement work that was done about a year ago, where Detroit citizens came together and organized to fight to get Proposal A on the ballot.
That's right.
In our efforts to try and have some influence and power over the giveaway of our tax dollars and our public land to these billionaires. And so we kind of want to, of course we support the protest, but we kind of want to shift the discussion a little bit and encourage Detroiters to call Olympia and demand a community benefit agreement. There is no reason why Olympia and the Pistons organization should not engage in discussions with community around a community benefit agreement ordinance. They, as developers, can enter into a legally binding agreement with the community on a voluntary basis.
When we came here to stand in solidarity with all the people across the city of Detroit that have been displaced and moved out of their houses, what we want to do is set the record straight. We're not confused about this issue. Dr. Bernadette has done the research. We have the calculations. We have the stats. The law is clear on this, that this is illegal. What we are saying to you is that there has been a convergence of multiple issues that have been illegally imposed on the citizens of Detroit. When you look at the fact that this act has been done, that has displaced over 100,000 homeowners, this was done with intentionality. When you look at the fact over 100,000 people have been removed out of their houses or with the threat of being removed out of their homes because they cannot afford water that has increased to the tune of 120% markup over the last 10 years.
And the citizens of Detroit have had 1 year to see what community benefits look like under Proposal B. And what they look like is nothing. The non-legally binding community benefits that have resulted from the current CBO process are not sufficient and are not satisfying to the NAC members who spend their time and energy participating in this process.
Dan Gilbert!
Doesn't care. Building towers in the air.
Dan Gilbert!
Doesn't care. Building towers in the air.
Dan Gilbert!
Doesn't care. Building towers in the air. Gilbert's gone too far. Who the hell you think you are?
Dan Gilbert!
Gone too far. Who the hell you think you are?
Dan Gilbert!
Gone too far. Who the hell you think you are?
Dan Gilbert!
Gone too far. Who the hell you think you are?
Dan Gilbert!
Gone too far. Who the hell you think you are?
Dan Gilbert!
Gone too far. Who the hell you think you are?